Let's hope that's working. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday. We're almost done with March. Hang in there. April's just around the corner. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that's been weighing my mind, especially after all these talks about services and Apple trying to pivot themselves as more of a recurring revenue type company instead of just hardware. That's seems to be a lot of Tim Cook's legacy, introducing the Apple Music subscription, as well as TV Plus, Fitness Plus, News Plus. Oh my God, there's so many different memberships in Apple One as a whole. There's a lot of, I think, potential here with bringing more services outside which of the ecosystem, which Apple has shown comfortability with by allowing the Apple TV app to be on third-party platforms, as well as supporting Apple Music on Android, even allowing certain features like interactive widgets on Android, which you cannot do on iOS via Apple Music, which is kind of funny to see. But yeah, like, obviously there's a tremendous amount of hype surrounding messaging platforms because, especially on Android, is just a giant mess of compatibility. There's a lot of people using WhatsApp, a lot of people using Telegram, Facebook Messenger, sometimes just Instagram DMs, and of course RCS is the new carrier-supported messaging service. So I'm pretty sure we're all in agreement. I haven't seen anyone disagree, but yes, it would be very, very nice if Apple could just fall back on RCS if the other user is not using iMessage. But there's all kinds of new standards we want Apple to move on with that they don't, for their own reasons. Yeah, I just got off the horn with the man about tech who's in the chat. But I was like, we just started talking about iMessage on Android. I think I'm ready to collect at least a little bit more data on this, because I actually think Apple bringing iMessage to Android would enable a bit more of a services pitch towards people on the Android platform. The reason I bring this up is because I think that the hardware differences between smartphones are going to get smaller and smaller. And honestly, for the most part, they already have gotten incredibly small. If you're willing to spend more than a couple $100 on a phone, you can get an OLED display, you can get decent cameras, a decent front-facing camera, usually gesture control, an okay battery life, fast charging capable, wireless charging capable. And as iPhones and Androids start to become more and more similar in their fair share of features, and the only difference is, oh, this one Galaxy phone has this slightly better periscope lens, and this iPhone has a slightly faster processor. Are these actually swaying people? That's what we need to ask of, like, should we actually opt for one over the other? So my pitch as to why Apple might feel more comfortable addressing services outside of just what's on iOS is because I think there is actually quite a bit of demand for more of a streamlined... Ooh, T-Mobile's freaking out. Sorry about that. I've been talking for a while, but now T-Mobile doesn't like it when I'm live. Oh, gee. See, I thought we were done with this now that we got rid of Starlink. All right, I'm going to pause some things. It's going to be compressed for a minute, but hopefully it should recover itself. Normally, this isn't a problem. It was doing so well earlier today. I apologize, everybody. You test these things as much as you can, and then it doesn't matter when you're actually public. Bit rate's improving a bit now. Usually these little hiccups are short, so hopefully the bit rate will fix itself momentarily. Yeah, you can't avoid it. Sometimes YouTube just wants to be laggy. I'm T-Mobiling now. Yeah, exactly. If you give it a few moments, it should iron itself out. I'm just gonna close background stuff just in case that's hogging up the bandwidth. There you go. It's improving now. Slowly but surely, it'll creep itself back up. T-Mobile's not perfect either. Anyway, there's not a great, like, singular messaging platform on Android, and there's a lot of people overseas using WhatsApp, and of course in the US there's a ton of people using iMessage, so the fallback is Facebook Messenger. So I'm hoping that if Apple was to enter this market, they could have an option on Android that is having a bigger emphasis on privacy, because, like, most of the Android options are all owned by Meta, or they're third party, which is less optimized or less streamlined compared to what iMessage is. So especially when there's a lot of, Apple is a very large player in the market, but they're not the dominant platform when it comes to market share. And if on Android people knew they could download an app and suddenly not break the whole iMessage group chat chain of issues, and suddenly be able to, have a messaging platform that is backed by your phone number but still capable of working over Wi-Fi. And I think what people probably really really like about iMessage is just the simplicity of it. It's not too complicated. It's a very popular company that's building this software, which means that if you're already an Apple Music customer, or a lot of Android users out there have an iPad already, they can use a pre-existing Apple ID and password, and use FaceTime, which technically is available on Android now in its own way. That can kind of be the fallback now, with SharePlay being an option and sharing your screen. And I think, especially as people in general are just not a huge fan of Meta and what that brand stands for, and the privacy concerns and the tracking concerns that just probably would not be as present on iMessage in the first place, I think it could be a heavy contender to Facebook Messenger. And Apple's shown plenty of interest in combating Facebook with the ad tracking stuff, and making it harder and harder for Facebook to monetize people's content. You could probably have a fairly high advocacy for privacy by offering iMessage on Android, and be like, this is the most secure messaging platform, and it's going to work really, really well with a ton of iOS users out there. RCS is better, but the Apple ecosystem is so dang good. Yeah, I don't think the protocol matters too much to the end user. I've heard of Visible. I have friends on Visible. They're not as cheap as Mint Mobile is, but they're a decent option. I don't have gigabit options where I live. I can't use Fios where I live. So unfortunately, what I'm using right now is the best internet I've ever had. And once every 2 weeks or so, I'll occasionally get the dipped upload speeds like you guys saw. But for the most part, the live streams, I can go for hours without any issues. But unpopular opinion, but iMessage and Facebook Messenger looks like the same messaging app. I don't I don't know if that's an opinion. That's just wrong. I mean, they don't. Have you used both? I use both every single day, and I don't think they could look any more different from each other, aside from just completely differentiating, I don't know, the language or something. No, Apple did not announce iMessage on Android, but I did want to dive into this because there is the European Union. European Union is kind of stepping up on laws and bills that they're hoping to pass to kind of break up big tech and not have so much control and power between each one. And part of that might involve one of them might involve iMessage being broken up so it's not restricted to just iPhones. It's not necessarily a bill that's going to be passed or anything, but I want to talk about just the potential of services, because if more and more Android customers all have an Apple ID, for one, that's going to make it easier to transition to an iPhone if they already have an Apple account, and simultaneously upselling people or pre-advertising, because don't act like Apple is above advertisement, because Apple already sends push notifications and emails people about TV Plus or News Plus or whatever on iOS. So if they knew there were a bunch of Android users that were using iMessage and they had an Apple ID and a password, trying to let them know about Apple Music, or about, you could support iCloud Messages. And if you have iCloud Messages, then opting for the 99-cent a month iCloud storage plan might sound a lot better, especially if you're texting people high-resolution videos and pictures, which can be done more securely with iMessage versus Facebook Messenger and whatnot. Yeah, Facebook and iMessage, I think, used to look a lot similar. Nowadays, they stuff Facebook Messenger with a bunch of all this extra who's online, and you can change. Everyone changes the colors, and I'll see people that I haven't talked to in years show up, and yeah, it's just Messenger has a bunch more color. They've got the activity, and the read receipts are different. The animations are different. There's a bunch of differences. I mean, if you ignore the differences, there's no differences. But iMassage, yeah. Visible offers Apple Watch plans. That's great if you care about having Apple Watch plans. I know I don't. But of course, the biggest argument Apple has been caught talking about in the past with like legal documents showing up and stuff is that iMessage would provide too many people an option to leave the Apple ecosystem and still be able to text and be a part. Apple's worried that iMessage is too strong of a reason to stay within the Apple ecosystem. Basically, they're worried about bringing iMessage to Android because they're worried people would instantly stop buying iPhones. And I know that's probably not everyone because I don't think iMessage is the only reason people buy iPhones. I do admit it's probably a very good reason, but I think the primary reason people buy iPhones and prefer using iMessage is just because it's the default app. That's just what they're used to. And yeah, it does sync between their devices, and Androids could probably fit within the Apple ecosystem a little bit better if you had iMessage on them. But I have a feeling that the hardware similarities are so close these days that I don't think a bunch of people would suddenly flock to going through the process of switching from an iPhone to an Android and all of the details that encompasses just because they now have iMessage on Android. It's still not going to be the default app on setup. You're still going to have to sign in with your Samsung or Google account, usually both, and download iMessage from the Google Play Store. Uh, did you decide if you keep the cinema display? Yeah, in my review I detailed I'm not keeping the studio display. Cinema display I sold a long time ago. Feels like it's mostly a USA program. No, I don't personally think it's just a USA problem. I think overseas, WhatsApp is not a great option either, and you don't want a monopoly on any particular app, and texting is a very important one. So, when WhatsApp is down, a bunch of people are just flat out unable to communicate with each other. And I don't think Facebook and Meta, as a company that, tracks people's data, and a company that doesn't care as much about privacy or encryption, should just be the sole owner of pretty much all messaging platforms. iMessage is the closest competitor they have, and that's only available on one platform. So Scott Stowell says, I'm 100% for this, even if I had to pay for it. My mother, just to fix out family group chat. Every other messaging app is terrible, and all of my friends on Android won't leave anyways. That's where I'm kind of feeling is like most people are probably either on iOS and they're keeping their iPhone and they're going to keep buying new iPhones, or they're on Android and they're going to keep buying Androids. So I don't think Apple needs to worry so much anymore about less people buying iPhones these days, because for one, it's more than just iMessage. But yeah, that's why Center Stage is active. Of course, I'm still using the studio display camera. I haven't returned it yet, but I'm going to. When WhatsApp went down, Telegram got a bunch of new users, right? And I'm okay with there being more than two options. I don't think we shouldn't just be restricted to two or even three options. It's okay if Apple wants to throw their hat in and put their option out there and just say, hey, we're going to make a messaging platform service that's works really well with iOS, but you can still play on Android. And again, it would resolve a lot of the complaints about the iMessage bullying, which I don't think necessarily would go away, because people who bully others for not having iPhones are still going to bully people, but they'll have less argument. The people who are bullies will have less arguments to go off of in the first place. Not going to lie, I would use an iMessage application on my S22 Ultra just so I can message all my... There you go. I actually switched from iPhone to Android last year. I just wish Apple supported RCS. That would be great. I don't think anyone's against that. I mean, we can say it as many times as we want, but there's all kinds of new standards that would directly benefit Apple that we wish they would support, and they don't, whether it be HDMI 2.1 on the MacBook Pros, whether it's 120 hertz on the new displays, whether it's USB-C on the iPhone, which still is rocking lightning to this day. There's all kinds of things we want Apple to adopt, but RCS, there's not really even any direct advantage to them switching to. It just kind of helps out the Android market, but Apple doesn't really get much out of it. I think it could very easily become a paid service, especially if iMessage on Android is fairly restricted to iCloud. So all of the pictures and videos you send on iMessage are part of your iCloud service, and they could choose to include 5 gigabytes of free like they do with iOS users, but if this is a known device that is not an Apple one, they might default to the cloud, and therefore upselling people 99 cents a month for you to have 50 gigs of storage, and streamlining just the process of having one app that can handle FaceTime or iMessage calls and sending text back and forth. I think there is a potential for monthly service revenue here. Why would Apple change? They get billions a year. They would still get billions a year, but we're talking about how to convert Apple's revenue stream to be more consistent, steady income instead of spiking the income all over the just in September. Whenever there's a new hardware announcement, the income spikes up, and that's it. Lightning is a superior corrector in my opinion. I wholeheartedly disagree, mostly because I've ran countless polls on this, and Lightning degrades much, much faster than Type-C does, and Apple keeps ditching Lightning on the iPads for USB-C and advertising as to why USB-C is better, which I agree. And Lightning is not bilateral. There's no Lightning to Lightning cables, whereas USB-C has C to C cables. I'm using one right now. You can do so much more with USB-C, and I think the iPhone could do so much more with Thunderbolt. I've done whole videos on that, but other than the fact that Lightning is a little bit thinner, even though the iPad Pro is thinner than the iPhone and has Type-C, I don't know what exactly it is about Lightning people like so much, but it objectively wears out faster. There's data to prove that. It doesn't age as well, and it can't do as much. The data speeds are slower. The charging speeds are slower. Apple introduced a faster version of Lightning called Lightning 3.0 in the 2017 iPad Pros, and then they got rid of it, and they don't even use that port anymore. Even on the latest iPhone with 1 terabyte of storage, that thing still has USB 2.0 speeds, which is unacceptable. Sorry, John Smith. Lightning sucks. The better question would be, how much is iMessage worth outside of iPhone? $10 a month, more or less? Would be kind of interesting if they put a flat-out paid service on it. I don't think they need to charge $10 a month for it, because if it cost anything to use, I think a bunch of people would just not use it at all. Thinner, that's what I mean. Just for the fact that it's thinner, even though devices that have Type-C are thinner than devices that have Lightning. I mean, the Surface Duo was like thinner than anything that ever had been released, and that thing had Type-C. I believe the Surface Duo was thinner than the iPod Touch, so it's not that much thinner. If you plug a phone/laptop into another laptop, what do you want to happen? Charging, mirror display, maybe you don't know, and it adds complexity. I think having a port that can't do anything, you get to decide that on software. I've done that before. You can plug in a Type-C cable to one laptop to another, and the software will ask, I don't know if macOS does this, I haven't tried it, but on Windows you can decide, do you want to charge it? Do you want to transfer data? You just build in a software option. Whereas Lightning, the answer is just you have to plug one end in a certain way, and then it's usually USB-A on the other end. Whereas Type-C, it doesn't matter which way you plug it in. You can plug in one cable here, one cable there, you can switch it. And then the hardware will figure it out. The software can come along and fix that. It doesn't add complexity to have less parts and less components. I use my Lightning now, 10 years fine. I ran a poll not too long ago and asked everyone, I think it was a community poll on YouTube. Thousands of people voted on it, and I said, have you had more Lightning cables wear out or USB-C cables wear out over time? It was not even close. It was like over 80% voted Lightning. Yeah, Type-C lets you choose which device to charge. Same on Android. So that's the way to do it. Should Apple be worried about all the positivity surrounding the Tab S8 and Samsung's pledge to provide updates for 4 years? I don't think so, because the Tab S8 is not selling anywhere close to the same volume as iPads. I don't know what the S8 is selling for, but I know that most iPads sold are $300. MagSafe charges slower, so why use it? That's why I use Lightning. MagSafe is the convenience argument. It's the same reason you'd use Wi-Fi over Ethernet. Ethernet is always faster than Wi-Fi, but it's a lot more convenient to use Wi-Fi. To me, at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to just drop my phone on a charger that's MagSafe and it docks in place than it would be to fuss around with a Lightning cable, where I got to grab the cable and grab the phone and line them up and plug them in, and then I got this wire hanging out. Instead, I just drop the phone and it starts charging. One-handed use. I've had many Lightning cables wear out on me. I've got a bag full of cables, and I've had to start marking them because 3 out of the 10 Lightning cables in there just don't work anymore. I've never had a USB-C cable go bad on me once. If you plug an iPhone into a Mac and you don't trust the computer, it will just charge the phone. The software solution already exists. It's not even an issue. Yeah, it's not a big problem. Why is your microphone's tripod so big? Because it's a free tripod. It's kind of been in the family for years. It's called Strudel. My dad used this when he was in college. It's very, very old, but it's kind of just at the right height for my microphone, and it's cheaper than buying a new one, I guess. This is also a beefy tripod. I mean, for the most part, I like putting my microphone here because the battery pack I use can slip right in and just sit here. That way I don't have to change out AA batteries on this microphone. But I've put bigger cameras on that, and this thing cranks up and gets very tall. And it's metal, it's beefy, so when you put big heavy cameras on a tripod, you want them to be kind of durable. Today's a good day for me. I got my 13 Pro back. Apple gave me a 10R for my loaner phone, so glad to have my Pro Motion back. Oh, good. That's cool. I didn't know they did loaner phones. That's some Boss mic tripod. It's very old. I think it's from the 80s. The EU be like, USB-C on the iPhone, iMessage on Android, bring down the walls of the Apple ecosystem. Basically, yeah, the EU is basically trying to pass legislation to kind of break up big tech so they don't have as much monopolistic practices. I don't even really think it's a monopoly, but they might theoretically force Apple to bring iMessage to Android. That could happen. The exposed pins on the lightning cables wear out a lot faster. That's what it's been for me. All of the issues we've had with lightning cables are not from the actual wiring breaking. It's from the exposed pins rubbing off and losing their... Whereas USB-C kind of has all of that internalized. So I don't buy the water resistance argument either, because there's tons of Android phones that are plenty water resistant with Type-C. So I'm plenty fine with Type-C, all the things. Let's see. Slow charging is something I always look out for. I use my devices for a decade at least. I mean, it's cool if you can do it, but... Oh, I agree. Some of the EU's ideas are absolute trash. And Benji can say that because he's from the EU. Or used to be from the EU. Oh my god. They do a loaner if they decide to take your phone for it failing a diagnostic test when I went for a screen replacement. Oh, okay, interesting. I think the studio display camera is pretty good. The movement is so unusual to see. I like it. Yeah, it's not terrible. It's not as sharp as I would like it to be, and sometimes center stage kind of wanders off and goes in directions I don't really want it to, but for the most part it's pretty nice. Among teens and young adults, iPhones make 80% of the market share. Well, that's the problem with monopolies. If you start like narrowing down where exactly, it's like, well, under the iOS App Store, Apple has a monopoly. It's like, well, yeah, they made the thing. That's their platform. It's like Netflix has a monopoly on the Netflix website. It's like, yeah, at what point do you want to drive it? At what point is it like, first of all, 80% is not a monopoly. Monopoly means one company has total control. Which, where I live, I would argue Comcast and Xfinity had a total monopoly because there was literally no other internet choices to choose from. Thankfully, that changed once T-Mobile Home Internet launched, as did Starlink, so now I've got some more options to choose from. But the quality of the webcam is actually surprisingly good. I still think it could be better, but yeah, it's good. I like especially when we're doing the members streams and I'm moving around as I'm filming videos and stuff. It's nice having the camera track with me. Which camera is better, studio display or 14-inch, 16-inch MacBook Pro? Well, when we ran the poll, most people chose the studio display, but here's the MacBook Pro webcam. So I can always switch back to this if I feel like it. I think you get probably a bit more of a sharper image because it's not cropping in on the center. It's on the sensor. It's still 1080p, but when I switch to center stage, it's cropped in. You're not getting the full field of view. Yeah, I know exactly what it's like to be Ninja Squid. Where I grew up, AT&T was the only Wi-Fi provider, and it was terrible. It was expensive and crappy. You could not live stream like this at all. Tangentially related, but how come people who want everything to be USB-C hate phones losing their headphone jack? Everyone should be happy to use the USB-C port for headphones. I guess I just think that there's less like low latency, high fidelity audio listening on smartphones, so the future for that is probably more wireless consumption. Um, so I don't know that many people that are still upset about losing the headphone jack, to be honest. Most people I know have kind of moved on from that. Um, have you seen the new Eve monitor? It's got everything you want. I've seen the Eve monitor and I've read a lot of complaints about it. I'm not entirely sold just because there's been a lot of quality control problems and customer service issues, and they just have a lot of like startup bugs that I'm not really confident in yet. Um, Apple Studio display is better, keeps you centered mostly. Yeah, it's still not as good as it could be, I think. But everyone kept talking about that Samsung M8 monitor. I don't know why that got so much attention. I guess because Samsung made a monitor with AirPlay before Apple did, which was kind of weird. But I thought it looked horrible. I don't like chins. I don't like asymmetrical bezels, and they had colored chins. It was meant to kind of look, I guess, somewhat like the 24-inch iMac, but I hated that design. So I'm not a fan of them glorifying chins in any way, and I don't think it was particularly a good deal. I mean, people kept saying, "Oh, it's cheaper than the studio display," and I'm like, "Well, if you're comfortable with having a chin, you can get way cheaper monitors than the M8, even from Samsung. Just go on Amazon and Google 4K 60 hertz monitor. You'll find $200 screens that look better than the M8 does. You really want to pay an extra $400 just for AirPlay?" So I don't know. They haven't shipped the one I'm talking about. I know the ones they have shipped, there's been a lot of complaints with. So I'm not super sold on Eve yet until they can improve quality control. Did you see Mark Gurman say Apple is working on iPhone Ultra, something above the Pro Max? I did not hear about that, but it sounds interesting. When was this posted? Was this today? Because I didn't read about it. But I think the iPhone line is depressingly like consistent of just same old, same old. Here's the Pro options. Here's the entry level options, and it might be good. It might be good for them to diversify the iPhone lineup and make it a bit more interesting, or just kind of mix things up a little bit. 32 inches, 4K, $349. I don't know why the M8 is so much more. It's like twice the price of other 4K monitors just for the fact that it has AirPlay built in. I agree it'd be nice to have AirPlay in the studio display, but I would not call it a deal breaker. 60 hertz is a deal breaker for me, at least, but I don't know why people want me to roast a monitor that not that many people are going to buy in the first place. Samsung just signed a new contract a few days ago with Apple for a new bendable screen technology that's better than what's on the Fold 3/4 for 2025. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I remember reading about foldable iPhones and, oh, it'll come out next year. Oh, it'll come out next year, and it still hasn't happened yet. So, can we compare? MC Rich, thank you for the super chat. He said, "Can you please disable center stage for a sec so we can compare the cameras on an equal level?" The problem is when you disable center stage, it's still cropped in. So yeah, I can turn it off, but it defaults to this position, and it won't take full view of the sensor when I haven't figured out a software way to do that. Like on iPads, when you live stream via Streamlabs, I just turned it back on. When you live stream via Streamlabs, you have the option to just take full advantage of the iPad's ultra-wide camera, and you just film from the full sensor. I don't know how to do that with the studio display. It still doesn't let me. So even if I turn off center stage, you're not getting the full field of view. So the closest thing I can do to give you guys an idea, I did this a lot more in my previous live stream. Now it doesn't want to focus on the chair. See, before, if the chair was in frame, it would try to include the chair. Now it doesn't want to. So I got to do this the hard way. I'm going to bring up a face here. All right. Center stage. There's a face. There you go. Track on this face. So this is the closest I can get to taking advantage of the full field of view. which I think probably captures the most amount of detail. No, include face. Thank you. Center stage. Thank you. Um, I wish I could just leave it on because I actually think the wide field of view would be kind of cool. But yeah, center stage is distracting, isn't it? Every time I live stream with it, people are going to be like, "Can you try this? Can you try this?" I wish my MacBook had center stage as well. I would love to have it on my monitor. It's too much money to spend on something that's 60 hertz still. Um, let's see. Are you just waiting for the XDR display that will be 4 times the price and won't end up buying it? I don't know for sure it will be 4 times the price because I have a hard time believing that the display Ross Young talked about will be more money than the Pro display because it's smaller. It's a 27-inch rumored to be 5K panel, whereas the Pro display is 32 inches and 6K. So if they're making a mini LED panel that's smaller, I imagine that means it's going to be cheaper than the Pro Display XDR. And he said basically every mini LED panel they've made is 120 hertz, and he doesn't expect this to be any different. So I don't know how they're going to do it because Thunderbolt 4 can't handle that. But by some miracle, whether it be Apple Silicon optimization or Apple being comfortable scaling the resolution down to 4K at 120 hertz, which Thunderbolt 4 can do. I just have to wait and see what's coming later. I'm not saying it's looking good. I know it's very possible it won't be what I want, and it's fairly likely that they might not make it 120 hertz. But there's a greater than 0% chance of that monitor existing, where they make like a $2,500 or $3,000 monitor that has 120 hertz that I could use like I'm using right now with my MacBook Pro. So I want that to exist, but if it doesn't, then this studio display will be cheaper by then. There'll probably be some sales and I could get this for less. Thank you for the super chat again, MC Rich. He says, what if you have it track the second face as well and then disable it when it's zoomed out? No, anytime you disable it, it defaults to the same exact view. It doesn't matter if I'm way off to the side. As soon as you turn off center stage, it goes back to the same view. So sorry, there's no way to do that. It's not going to be under $3,000. Well, we don't know that. There was a lot of people that were saying there's no way it's going to be Apple would make a monitor under $2,000, and they did that. Maybe they're doing it through Thunderbolt 5, but my Mac doesn't have Thunderbolt 5, and I don't plan on buying a Mac that does. So that's not really a solution for me. There is a way to run iMessage on Android. If you look for it, you will find it. Just require any Mac. No, I've seen those videos. That's not what I'm talking about. People aren't going to go through all that work just to get iMessage working. But why not get both? Well, are you made of money? Because I know I'm not. If you watch Tailosive EV, you know I have some fairly large expenses coming up that basically even if I wasn't buying a Tesla, I would find much better uses of money than spending $4,000 on monitors. That's okay. I don't need to drop that much. Let's see. I want the M8 because it has a smart TV software and it's still a monitor and it's very small. In college, I don't have much room. It would be great to have a small TV that could also be a monitor all in one. I just think it would be cheaper for you to buy a $300 monitor and then plug in like a Fire TV stick in the back. The amount of money you're paying for that monitor to have it's not tvOS, but to have like a smart TV firmware version in that, it's not worth an extra $300. Trust me. You can find those little plug-in Roku sticks and those kind of basic dongles that plug into the HDMI port and turn any monitor into a TV for under $100. And Samsung is charging you an extra $400 just for that feature. It's not worth it, in my opinion. Would not recommend it. There's an arbitrary software limitation that macOS has that iPadOS doesn't have. That's a first. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Occasionally that kind of stuff does happen, but yeah, it's rare. If you have $4,000 to burn on one 27-inch mini LED display, buy 2 studio displays and have a 54. That's not how that works, but I don't know for sure if they're going to make a 120 hertz monitor in the year. But because Ross Young is reliable and he said that's what it's going to be, I have to assume that there's a greater than 0% chance of it happening. So it's worth the wait because I'm not in a huge rush to have an external monitor. Honestly, it's regardless because I'm planning all these trips and I'm probably going to be spending several months away from home later this year. It's a lot of money to spend on something that I can't take with me. You know, I'm kind of cool dropping all this money on my MacBook Pro because I can take that with me on trips and use it wherever I go. It's got a battery, you know, it's a all-in-one. It's got everything I need, and I took it to Puerto Rico, and you know, I can edit and make content with it there. The monitor is like thousands of dollars that's just going to sit here on the desk, which will be very useful when I'm home and at the desk, but there's going to be long stretches of time where I won't have access to it. So regardless, I'm going to be using the laptop screen. Um, yeah, I don't see Gurman saying there's going to be an Ultra iPhone. I feel like Mac rumors would have talked about that by now. Um, yeah, I agree with Scott. The problem is the display on the MacBook Pro was way too good. The mini LED and the 120 hertz was way better than we were anticipating, and now all of the external monitors we want have to compromise in some way, either in the dynamic range or the refresh rate. Um, but hopefully Apple gets something similar. I got the M1 Max MacBook Pro with 8 terabytes of storage. There is zero resale value in monitors because technology moves too fast. Well, that's good because I wouldn't mind buying a used studio display. So if I can find a refurbished or heavily discounted studio display in the future, you know, I'm very happy with this one. It's just there's potentially a much better one coming later, and I'm not in a huge rush right now to get an external monitor. So in the event that the new one comes out and it's like Joey says, and it's way over $3,000 and it's still not very good, then okay, I wouldn't mind coming back to the studio display, but by then I'll probably be able to get it for cheaper because it's not XDR and it's not 120 hertz. $2,000 is kind of a lot to spend on a monitor that is missing those kinds of features. Universal control has just been too unreliable for me. It hasn't stopped being buggy, so I've just ended up not using it too much, unfortunately. I was really excited for it, and it honestly worked much better for me in beta. But even now that it's kind of out of beta, but I guess not really, it's like on the official release, but they still label it beta. Um, yeah, I still will move my mouse over and it hangs every second. It's like and I tried to show it on stream, but there's always a better something later. Imagine being the guy who bought a Flintstone car and the engine came out. There is, but like I say, because people ask me about that a lot. Should I wait for this? Should I wait for that? It's like the question always comes down to: are you in a hurry? Like, can you not live with your current setup? Yes, technically there will always be something better, but the difference with Apple monitors, they don't release these things once a year. It's not the same thing as buying an iPad or a MacBook or an iPhone. Those types of things, they refresh every 12 months, maybe every 18 months, but that's a stretch. Most of the time, you know, after a year or so, there will be a new one. Whereas with monitors, Apple makes like one of these things a decade. Occasionally, like, I mean, one like this. Like the Pro Display XDR is in such a different category, it doesn't even compare, in my opinion. But they do not update these monitors annually. So I don't think even the new mini LED monitor they're working on is necessarily a replacement to the Pro Display because it's smaller and lower resolution. So I I'm not in a hurry. I can live with what I currently have, and I'm willing to wait and see what's coming later. I'm more comfortable buying hardware when I know that it's not going to become dated very quickly. Um, I look like a Cybertruck kind of guy, but my wallet looks like a Model 3 kind of wallet. Maybe open box from Best Buy. Is there even certified refurbished XDR displays from Apple? No, but they're sold at much lower volume, so I wouldn't expect there to be. Studio displays are going to be sold at much higher volume because they're way cheaper. And I'm not insistent that I have to buy the monitor from Apple. I'm sure there will be tons of studio displays, open box from Best Buy and on Amazon for cheaper. Pro Display is just so absurdly high priced that it doesn't really depreciate much. I'm fairly confident the studio display will depreciate. Um, Maybe that display will come out next year. If it does, then great. I have more time to save. I'm not in a huge rush, you know. It's external monitors are nice and I appreciate editing and live streaming with bigger ones, but it's not like I'm in a dire need for one. Unlike when I bought my MacBook Pro. I was like, we're planning trips, we're going to take vacation or not vacations. We're going to be away from home. I need a computer that's powerful that I can take with me. I need a laptop. So regardless of how crappy the M1 Max chip would have been, or even if all the rumors ended up being wrong and there's no mini LED and there's no legacy ports, even if it was just the exact same laptop from 2019, just now with Apple Silicon, I would have bought it because I was in the market. Um, have you used two monitors? Is it better for you? I have. I mean, I'm using two monitors right now. Basically, I have some information on my MacBook display and I have some information on my studio display. In the past, with my iMac Pro, I coupled it with two extra monitors, so I was using three plus my iPad all at once. And usually, I run out of things to put on the third monitor. Most of the time, if I have that many screens, I just end up putting Discord on one of them permanently, and I already have my iPad Pro sitting at my desk a lot of the time, just running Discord anyway. So it's kind of unnecessary for me. I've tried two monitors. It's kind of nice, but not super necessary. Would you get the height adjustable stand again so you can have the external monitor above the MacBook, or you just use them side by side? It is quite an upsell. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. I like having the monitor adjust like this, and it's very easy to move up and down, which is cool. But whether that's a $400 feature or I've seen like monitor stands you can get, I can get just a little piece of wood accessory that just lifts the monitor a little bit higher and you could just put the monitor on that and it would achieve the same thing for probably a lot less. Heck, I could even just put a box behind my MacBook and just put the monitor on the box and it would probably work. So probably not. If I do end up coming back to the studio display, I don't think I'll get the height adjustable option. Um, $400 just so it can go like that is not, it's not super crucial for me. Do you think Apple will do anything major with iPadOS with the software being announced before the hardware in the fall? I've been waiting for them to do something major for years, and every single year it gets snubbed. It's always like, not worth it. It's like, they just brought over a few more iOS features. So I'm still at the point of I've given up. I don't believe Apple is going to make iPadOS more functional or more useful. I think they're going to keep on keeping it as it's good for the basics, it's good for media consumption, and they'll just keep going with the new hardware. They're going to give it the M2 chip, and they're going to give it some stupid wireless charging option because they don't want to listen to what people want out of the iPad because they're too afraid that the iPad will become better than the Mac, which I think is a dumb fear. So, no, sorry. I don't think iPadOS is going to be much better. They'll just bring over a few iOS features. What it genuinely, honestly, really, really needs right now is just optimized battery charging. Why does the iPad not have that? It's literally hurting people's battery health. It's ruining our battery lives. Every other device has it. The Mac has it. The watch has it. The iPhone has it. All of these devices need charge limiters, and they still don't even let you cap the charge rate on the iPad to 80%. It just goes 100% every single day, and it keeps it there. And I don't even think it's doing what a Mac does, where it pulls power from the adapter instead of the battery. It's still just pulling all of its energy from the battery. So here says, Apple will surely bring Pro apps to the iPad. I heard that 3 years ago. As soon as the A12X chip came out, people were like, wow, this is so fast. It's faster than certain Intel Macs. They could bring Final Cut to the iPad next year. Well, maybe they'll do it next year. Another year goes by. Well, maybe they'll do it next year. Now that they've brought keyboard and mouse support, of course they got to bring Final Cut to the iPad. Nope, they don't do it. Now that they've brought the M1 chip to the iPad, of course they're going to bring Final Cut. Nope, they don't do it. So I don't know what exactly they're waiting for. They've had plenty of opportunities to bring... Yeah, the iPod Touch probably has optimized battery charging. Why don't iPads have it? Makes no sense in my opinion. Keep expectations low on iPadOS. Yeah, just it's been a disappointment year over year over year, so I'm no longer gonna get my hopes up. Hey, thanks for the super sticker, Doctor. That was kind of you. It's just a dog, but I appreciate the support. Um, where did you get that sword? It was a gift from my dad. It was a graduation gift. It's the Sting sword from The Hobbit, which is kind of cool. But yeah. An example I think of is schools. They probably charge all of their iPads at the same time every day, and most of the night they're at 100%. Oh, yeah, that's terrible, huh? Yeah, that's really deteriorating the battery health to keep them at 100% plugged in all the time. Ugh, why are they missing these things? They brought it to iOS. iPhones have had this for several years now. And iPad is basically running the same thing. Why even call it iPad OS? Yeah. They'll do something with iPad OS to keep it stale. It still can't even get a calculator app. Um New iPad Pro fall 2022 thoughts, Drew? It's I don't know what to say. It's going to be more of the same crap, like an even faster chip. And it sounds like some kind of wireless charging method that is not going to be useful. I don't think the iPad form factor makes sense for inductive charging. I I think that it make inductive charging makes sense for small devices like Apple Watches, AirPods, and iPhones, especially with MagSafe, because with one hand you just drop them on the charger and they start charging, which is really convenient. But with an iPad, you don't hold it with one hand. You're gonna pick up the whole thing and try to align it with some magnet ring. That's gonna be so much harder to align. It does not make sense to me. Um, that's pretty much all that's been rumored for the new iPad Pro is some form of wireless charging, which, by the way, won't work with all of your pre-existing accessories. So they're going to make you all buy new Magic keyboards for $300 or new cases for $100. And the other difference is it gets the M2 chip instead of the M1 because everyone was complaining so much about how the M1 chip is so slow in my iPad and I need an even faster chip. Ugh. MC Rich says, if WWDC is in person, do you think the sessions with Apple engineers will have an online option? Probably. I don't know why they wouldn't, especially since they've done two quadruple UDCs online only. They want to interact with as many people as possible. So, yeah, I, I imagine if it is in person, it's mostly going to be for the workshops. Like developers that want to work with the software engineers can show up in person, but I think the keynote presentation will actually still be virtual. So everyone watches the same thing there. You don't need to bring like 5,000 people into a big event hall. They'll just have workshops where people can meet. If it is in person, that aspect of it I think will be. But the announcing the changes with software and if there's a Mac Pro announcement or a MacBook Air announcement, I think that will still be just like a virtual keynote. Um, let's see. AirPods Pro 2 hopefully come in different colors, but it probably won't happen as it's been 5 years since AirPods were introduced. I feel like they could have easily done more color options with AirPods by now, and they haven't. So they must have some legit reason for it. That they probably want it to be a certain level of iconic and recognizable, and maybe they think if AirPods are in various colors, it won't be as iconic. I don't think it's a good answer. I would still love a pair of black AirPods if they made them, but they could have done that a long time ago, and they still haven't. So, um, we need a huge iPad or a huge touch device from Apple. I would agree if the software was there to catch up with it. Until the software is there to catch up, there's really no point to making just an iPad that's running the current version of iPad OS on a big screen. It's already kind of pointless. Um, the reason Final Cut isn't on iPad is there's literally 3 developers working on Final Cut. That's still dumb, but it doesn't change the fact that I think that it's pointless for Apple to leave iPad OS the way it is when the hardware is improving. How about you stop spending so much money on putting in higher end hardware in the iPad and instead spend some money on upping the software a little bit. Um, there's a lot of cheap $2 Android devices. Let's see. Apple has 76% of the US market and 22% of the world market, while Android has 72% of the world market. Clearly, everyone prefers Android. I don't necessarily say if I would. I don't know if I would necessarily say everyone prefers Android because in countries where average incomes are higher, in then the iOS typically leads. The main reason Android is 72% of the world market is most of the world market is lower income countries that don't have the spare cash for iPhones. It's like saying most people prefer McDonald's because McDonald's sells at the highest volume of all restaurants. It's like, I don't think that means everyone thinks McDonald's makes the best food. They just sell at the highest volume. Sure, high volume sales can account for something, but considering the most commonly sold Android is like sub $400, and the most commonly sold iPhone is over $800. That doesn't mean most people prefer Android. That's just what they can afford for the most part. There's like 3 times as many people in India than there is in the United States. So people in India, especially with the huge import tariffs, people in India cannot afford iPhones. That doesn't mean they don't want them. It just means that's what the $200 Androids are what they can afford. If iMessage was on Android, then I honestly probably wouldn't have an iPhone. Oh, okay. See, I wanted to run this poll. I want to know, would you switch to Android if it had iMessage support? Because Apple's concern, I think, their main reason that they saw potential. They had conversations about bringing iMessage to Android because, you can get more people with Apple IDs and you can upsell them more services and you can advertise to them as long as they've registered an account through Apple. But Apple's concern was that less people would buy iPhones if they knew that iMessage was available on the alternative platform. So I wanted to get some data on this. I know it's a small sample size, but I want to know how many people would consider switching to Android if they knew iMessage was over there. Apple is a luxury brand name in tech. I see you're from America. If you make $50,000 in America, you're poor to middle class, but you're 1% wealthier than the rest of the world. Yeah, it's true. I don't think a lot of people in first world countries realize how nice they have it. But I'm way too deep in the ecosystem and I love it. Yeah, that's the same situation for me. I mean, there's definitely hardware on Android phones that I'm impressed by, but the ecosystem is far deeper than just iMessage. It goes to AirDrop, it goes to Setup, it goes to iCloud, it goes to iCloud backups, it goes to Apple Music, which I don't use anymore, but when I did, that was a huge selling point, and I imagine would be a pretty decent selling point for a lot of you. And the longevity, that's another one. Apple Silicon, the battery life you have available, and Face ID. Man, I can't find another biometric I like as much as Face ID. So I knew that most people would probably say no, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of surprised over 20% are saying yes. At least right now. It's at 27% would say, yeah, I would switch to Android. That's not a small amount. That's almost a third. I thought about switching to Android, but I'm so deep in the ecosystem, it would be too much of a hassle. Even if Android did have iMessage, I still think that hassle would be there. If people were asked which phone they would use if money wasn't a factor, then iPhones would probably lead by a huge margin. Non-techies hugely outnumber techies. That's very true. At least when money is less of a factor in the first world markets, that like people don't. It's people in America and in Europe spend a lot of money on their phones. iMessage on Android would remove a barrier to switching to Android, but I'll stick with iPhone because Apple currently provides the smallest phone available, which is the 13 mini. That's true. I don't know of an Android phone that gets much smaller than that. Apple is just such a quality experience again and again. Yeah, I think they've kind of had a more thought out approach to the software end of things. And the longevity of you can have a phone and use it for years and years and years, and people just don't experience that as much with Pixels and Androids. And I don't think that would go away just if Apple decided to support iMessage on Android. But I do love Type-C. I would really, really enjoy using Type-C on an Android phone. I'm tempted to buy a second phone and have it to be an Android phone, but that's just because I'm a tech nerd. Yeah, that's true. We're all tech nerds. So I assume the poll is going to be somewhat biased because everyday people probably aren't willing to switch to Android just because they don't like the process of switching. It's complicated. You have to deal with setup and SIM cards and transferring photos and contacts, and people don't like that whole process. Top tier tech says small things. Android has Apple Music. I like the fingerprint in the screen. I like the stylus on the Ultra. I like the camera a little bit. Better on the Android phones too, and their 120 hertz looks better. That's funny how that works, huh? But there's advantages. I don't know if I would pick them over the iOS advantages of just having years of support. And I think the 13 Pro Max has like the better battery life. I don't think there's that many Android phones that can beat out the 13 Pro Max. Do you think any Android company will be able to build a comparable ecosystem to Apple? Yeah, I was just talking about this on the Man About Tech's live stream, so check him out if you want more me rambling. But I don't think they will build an ecosystem that's comparable to Apple's, but I think Google is in the best position to. Google has Android, which is, of course, the next big competitor to iOS, and they own that. So if they design the software and the hardware on their Pixel phone, and there's talk of a Pixel Watch, and there's, Chromebooks, but they've just been limited so much by their software. If Google put a big emphasis on making pro class software, whether it's video editing, audio editing, 3D modeling software, like all kinds of professional workflows, if they tried to push that development more on Chromebooks and they started beefing up the performance of their own custom silicon, which Google is making their own silicon now. It's not very good, unfortunately, but they are in the right position, I think, to make an ecosystem that could rival Apple. Frankly, I would love to see it. I would love to see them try, because I think, if any of you are watching this, or if any of you are typing in the chat right now, you're already using a Gmail account. You already have a YouTube account. So if I could have one ecosystem that, that was my AdSense, that's my way of living. That's how I do this as a full-time job. Someone was asking earlier if I have a real job. I do not. This is it. This is what I do full-time. But I already have a Google account. I use YouTube more than any other streaming service. I pay for YouTube Premium. If I could also just have all of my computers, whether my laptop, my phone, my tablet, my watch, if all of those were also controlled by Google, I could probably have an even more streamlined, simplified experience, especially if Google made like their own video editing application, or live streaming software like OBS. They're not doing the things they should be doing to compete with Apple, but I think they could do it. Samsung probably does a better job because Google is just terrible at pretty much everything they do. I mean, they throw money at things very well, and I'm grateful that YouTube as a platform exists, but they've had really buggy experiences with the Pixel hardware, and they have commitment problems, like the Man About Tech was saying. Like, they introduce all these services and options, and then they get rid of them and they abandon them, and they don't really compete. They don't really compete with Apple in terms of software support and longevity and the Apple Silicon performance. So I think Google has the resources and the brand power to compete with an Apple ecosystem. They're just not doing it, which is a shame, because competition is a good thing, and I would love to see Google try. I don't think necessarily it would work, but right now I don't feel like they're even trying. Like, I could, if I was able to have an ecosystem of devices that all work together as well as Apple does, think about it. I would have Google powering my YouTube account, powering my AdSense account, which is my job, also my Gmail, which is all of my, email going in and out. Simultaneously, they could have the optimization for the video editing software, the silicon, the hardware on the inside, the computer itself, my phone, my watch, everything just seamlessly, the TV, everything could just all work together so well, to a point where, Google has the internet power with the Google Assistant and Google Search and with YouTube. Apple doesn't necessarily have all that, and I don't think they could get it as easily. But thank you for the super chat, Christian. He says, I carry a Galaxy Fold and an iPhone, best of both. I don't like having too much stuff. I've tried that in the past. I tried having an Android and an iPhone. It's just too much. It adds more complexity to me. It's like every time I take my phone out of my pocket, now I have to think, oh, wait, which one should I take? Which people do I text with this phone? Which people do I text with this phone? Now when I charge, I have to bring two chargers with me on a trip, because this one's Type-C and this one's Lightning. And I've done it before. I just couldn't get used to it. I don't want to carry two phones with me everywhere I go. iCloud Plus features are incredibly underrated. Hide My IP and Hide My Email are insanely good features, and the pricing is basically a steal. That's true. I do like the Hide My Email stuff. Samsung is lacking software. From what I've read, Samsung gets software better than Google does. Um, at least on Android. Um, let's see. My Pixel is fine. That's good. I've just talked to too many people who have had issues with their Pixel. Like my dental hygienist was complaining to me about her Pixel aging, and I was like, "Well, if you like Android, you should check out the Pixel 4a or the Pixel 5a. They have some really budget-friendly ones that are really good value." And she was like, "No, I want an iPhone," which I thought was funny. I was like, "Here I am, the Apple sheep, advocating someone get this Android phone that I think is a good deal." And they're disagreeing and saying, "No, I just want an iPhone." And I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "I just think it ages better." She was like, "My daughter has an iPhone and it doesn't have near as many problems as my Pixel did." And she had like a Pixel 2, I think. It was like not even that old, but she was running into issues with it. And she was mentioning how the battery would die before it reaches 0%, and she doesn't see iPhones having that same issue as often. So um, yeah, I'm with Curbside. He says, currently I have the 13 Pro Max and I'm not planning on upgrading for another 3 years or when there's a foldable iPhone, whichever comes first. I also am planning on keeping my Pro Max for several years. I've followed all the leaks and rumors for the new iPhone 14 and none of it sounds interesting or worthy of upgrading in my opinion. So I'm totally content with just keeping what I got. I want one of my friends to get a Z Flip just so I can have access to one. There you go. There's a lot of them floating around, I think. Yeah, I do think that Samsung's getting better. I think they supply 4 years of software support now, but Apple still does like 6, sometimes 7, I think. Yeah, unfortunately, Google's just never been that great at hardware. I mean, they're better at it when they give it away, like the Google smart speakers. They sell those at a loss, I'm pretty sure. I don't think they're profitable, but they're just trying to improve the Google Assistant. You know what's funny is my wife and I still use the Google Home Max. Do you guys remember that thing? We still have it. It's still in the kitchen and she loves it, but it still sucks. Sometimes it doesn't hear her. It has all kinds of Wi-Fi problems. Like just the other day, we're not even talking to it. We're just hanging out in the living room, but we can hear it talking to itself in the kitchen. It's like, "I can't connect to the Wi-Fi right now. Please check your settings in the Google Home app." I go to Google Home. I try to set it up, and it's like, "Cannot connect, cannot connect." A couple days ago, it was working fine, and then suddenly today, it's like, "Oh, I can't connect." So I unplug it, plug it back in, and now it works fine. So I don't think it's a problem with the Wi-Fi itself. We've used it with all kinds of routers, but it gets very, very loud. So my wife appreciates the sound quality of it, and it can read her recipes, which she likes. She'll like say, "What's the recipe for this?" And then it'll read off the ingredients and the steps, and she sets timers with it. So yeah, we could not sell that thing. No one wanted to buy the Google Home Max. I don't know why I bought it in the first place. I remember doing a live stream where I was like, "If you guys want me to review the Home Max, if you super chat enough, I'll pay the rest for it." And enough people super chatted to the point that we bought it, and then no one wanted it after that. Trying to return a Google speaker is the most laborious task from my experience. I didn't try to return it. I was just trying to sell it. Top tier tech says, "I pulled a Randy. I traded my blue 13 Pro Max into Best Buy for $875 and got the green one. It is too beautiful." Wow, Best Buy offered you $875 for trade-in? That's pretty good. I mean, it's not great, but dang. Was that like an $1,100 phone that you got 875 back for? I guess it's not that old, huh? Get a switch for the outlet that when it hears a specific thing, it toggles the connection off and on. Yeah, it's not worth it. I don't need to waste money on this product. I've already bought it in the first place. I've already I've already spent money on it, which was a mistake. Don't need to make this mistake worse. I've been having Wi-Fi problems with my HomePod minis and my internet's awesome. Yeah, I've noticed those smart speakers have a hard time with it. Looking forward to 120 hertz in non-pro iPhones. As far as I can tell, that's not happening. It sounds like 120 hertz is once again only going to be on the Pro iPhones. There has been several reports and analysts claiming that the Series 3 is going to be killed off this year. So thank you, please. I hope it's real. The Series 3 should not exist. It should not be on the website. It's a disgrace to mankind. It's a war crime. How dare they? You probably love the HomePods. No, we use Google speakers. We have a Google speaker in the bathroom. I think there's one in the bedroom and one in the kitchen. And my HomePod has not been used for months. Tried to sell it, no one wanted it. Hey Brett, welcome back. Where on earth is underscreen Touch ID? It's in Android phones. I think Apple intentionally has left it out of iPhones. I don't think it's like from lack of trying or they can't figure it out. It's like you clearly can put Touch ID in the screen. They just don't want to. They think Face ID is better. You lost $225 value over 6 months with the phone. Not that bad. It had some scrapes on the steel sides. Yeah, usually, of course, you can always get much better return when you're selling, but trade-in is like a guarantee, which is why usually it's a lot lower than that. But $225 is not as bad as I thought. Let's see. You got to keep this monitor just for center stage. What killer feature for streaming? Yeah, it's so useful, right? As I sit in the same place for over an hour and I move my head back and forth. Center stage, it's so nice. I mean, the channel members should be advocating for me to keep the monitor more because I use the center stage camera when I'm doing my behind the scenes live streams a lot more than I do during these live streams because I'm just sitting here. But it's a lot of money to spend on something that I can't take with me. There's several trips we're trying to plan right now that I'm going to be away from home for months. So it feels kind of weird to spend that kind of money on something that I won't be able to use for a decent amount of time. And I do notice the difference between 120 and 60. So I might come back to it later in the year. I'm not saying I'll never have a center stage camera, but Apple Studio Display, Nano or Glossy. So with the Studio Display, you can opt for nano texture for cheaper than you've ever been able to. With the Pro Display, if you wanted nano textured glass, it was an extra $1,000. With the iMac, it was an extra $500. Now it's an extra $300. So it's cheaper than it's ever been. However, I would say it really only makes sense to get it if you don't have much control over the lighting in your environment. I've looked at the nano textured glass in Apple stores. I don't think it looks that much different. It kind of looks like a screen protector has been applied, which I'm not a fan of. And it has this little nano textured hole for the webcam, and that hole kind of indents a little bit. So I just don't really like the look of the nano textured. I think the glossy glass looks more premium. And I have pretty decent control over my lighting environment anyway, so I don't really deal with much glare. I'm just gonna return the Studio Display. I never want a Touch ID device again. Yeah, I have it on my MacBook, but honestly, most of the time it lets me just double tap my watch when I need to, which is nice. When Apple finally adds Face ID with mask when people ditch masks again, and then it doesn't even work when the watch did. Yeah, that was double irony. Apple has little reasons to adopt Touch ID at this point. Yeah, it would have made more sense during 2020, wouldn't it? In Korea, Galaxy S22 has many issues like flickering, jiggling display, and lower frequency rate. People think that they want to be an iPhone clone, but failed. Uh-oh. That's not good. Honestly, I think if I had to buy an Android phone right now, I would buy the Galaxy S22 Plus. I like the look of it. Just the one-size bezel all the way around. The Ultra has some cool features, but I don't think they're features I would care about. So, just for the battery life and the bezels, I think I would choose S22 Plus. I'll admit, I'm not like willing to switch to Android, but when I saw pictures of the S22 Plus, I was like, ooh, that's a good clean design. I don't know. It just kind of jumped out at me a little bit of just like one size bezel and thin bezel and small camera hole instead of big old eye hole or notch or something. I don't know. I would get over it very quickly, but it looked nice. If there was a way for them to put Face ID in the MacBook, yeah, I would dig it. Do you think iPhones will ever have 144 hertz or even 240? Maybe iPads are max? I'm less convinced because the difference that people would be able to notice is so small. And right now, from supply chain talks, it sounds like Apple is trying really, really hard to get iPads to switch to OLED because OLED has a higher contrast ratio and it takes up less space and it consumes less power than mini LED. But the only problem is they can't get the brightness high enough and the refresh rate um, results in more burn-in issues. So they're trying to get OLED displays reliable and stable enough to the point that they can put them on an iPad. And that's just, they're struggling to get OLED to 120 hertz on an iPad. They can do it on a phone now. They just figured that out. But they're trying to figure out how to do OLED on MacBooks and iPads without compromising on burn-in and brightness. There are OLED laptops and OLED tablets now, but you'll look at the nits. They're all 300, 400 nits. They're not very bright, and Apple wants to not compromise in those regards. And they know that iPads and MacBooks are used for many, many years, so they have a very, very high threshold for what they allow on their devices in terms of display. So I think that's their priority first and foremost. I don't think there's a big rush for them to adopt 144, which is a very subtle difference, and 240, which gamers probably appreciate, but I don't think I can tell the difference myself. I've used 165 hertz monitors alongside my iPad Pro, and it's it's incredibly subtle. Just barely. It's probably placebo that I can even tell the difference. If you just had two monitors and one was 120 and one was 165, I probably wouldn't be able to notice which is which. But yeah, basically, the higher the refresh rate gets, the harder the difference is to notice. Going from 60 to 120, a lot of people can notice that. Not everyone. I still run into people that don't notice it. But every jump you do is a smaller and smaller niche. So I think at a certain point, it's just law of diminishing returns where you're like, yeah, you could do 240, but it's just going to eat into your battery life and no one will really notice. I don't think the latency is that bad on the Apple Pencil and the iPad Pro. At first, I was thinking, like, well, maybe they could get latency lower with 240 hertz, but it's already so absurdly low. It's like 9 milliseconds of latency. Frayden7 says, I think you're right about something with the smart speakers. I ask my Mini the temperature outside, and sometimes it tells me, but other times it will say, I don't know where you are. I don't know what it is. Just devices that are stationary and connected to Wi-Fi all the time. Maybe it's our routers. Our routers might act up and boot the devices off or something. Solitaire at 240 hertz, exactly, yeah. I'm at a point where I don't even care about hardware unless it's Mac. Software features get me more excited now than anything else. I'm kind of in a similar boat just because the alternative, which is Windows, Chrome OS has like nothing, don't have applications that I can utilize very much. Like, I really, really appreciate Final Cut Pro because they optimize the software for the hardware so that you can export very efficiently and without eating into your battery life very much, which applies to my line of work quite a bit. And I appreciate the Apple ecosystem and, you know, how my phone and AirDrop, which I'm not going to get on Windows. I'm going to have to go through some third-party application that I'll have to download on my phone, or I'll have to import manually. And Windows was just so unreliable for me back when I tried to use it that I'm like, yeah, okay, it's great that Intel found some new way of making a faster chip, and it's cool that, yeah, when you consume twice as much power, you can perform 30% better than the Apple Silicon. It's like, yeah, I'm happy for you, Intel, but I don't care because that chip or the new AMD graphics card or whatever, that's not going to be in any computer that I can actually utilize because I appreciate Final Cut and I will utilize Final Cut. And if I have to buy a PC to get AMD graphics or the new Intel chip, then I know I got to deal with the Windows 10 update issues and firmware corruption, which I've run into, and you got to battle it out with pre-builds. And I really want a laptop, especially because I want something I can take with me. I don't want to tower because that severely limits where I can work, and that limits how far I can travel and how long I can travel for. So I need something with good battery life that's power efficient, and there's just not really a great market of that in the laptop industry. So especially for PCs, as far as good battery life on laptops, Apple is basically the only option, especially for high intensive video editing. So it's cool that there's other graphics cards and processors being built, but I'm not gonna be able to use any device this comes out with. Um, Tried to get the wife a free iPhone 13 instead of a S22 using T-Mobile's trade-in deal, but T-Mobile only takes $400 off the price of the iPhone, where the S22 is $800 off with her S10e, whereas you get the same amount off each phone if turning in an iPhone 10 or newer. Gotcha. I see. Hey, Apple Pie says hello. Hey, from Hungary. Hungarian Apple YouTuber here. Did a similar poll, and it was interesting to see that majority don't care about iMessage. It's all Messenger and WhatsApp here. Thoughts? Makes sense because iOS is usually not dominant market share outside of the US. So in markets where most people are not using iMessage, they're going to use alternative options. So that's why I think, at least overseas, it might make sense for Apple to do iMessage on Android. Maybe they don't launch it in the United States. If you have a Samsung phone, can't you have the Eco-like Apple system on Windows? I don't think to the same extent. It requires a lot more setup, and it's still going to be this device is running this operating system built by this company, and this device is running this operating system built by a different company, and you're using hardware from companies that didn't write the software, and there's all of these barriers and emails and passwords and third-party applications you have to optimize. And I know you can try to emulate it best you can, but it requires a lot more work, and it's not going to be as good. So it's like, why bother? Were you let down last year when the Apple Watch didn't get a squared off design? No, because I love the Series 7. If I didn't like the Series 7, I wouldn't have bought it. But it actually ended up looking better than I thought. I was going into it expecting the squared off edge design, and I was kind of on the fence. I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to upgrade or not, maybe. But then when the new design came out, I was like, wait, the display actually like molds over the side? You can like see information from a 90-degree angle. I was like, this looks way cooler than the squared off design. So it wasn't what I expected, but I was really happy about it. Skylar says, talk about Windows being unreliable. My work PC once shut down just from plugging it in. Yeah, I had all kinds of software issues with my PC. I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's too unreliable. Making the whole bed of a pickup truck a gas tank and claiming we can go just as far as the Prius. It kind of misses the point. It's a kind of good analogy, Josh, but I don't think the range of the Prius is that much further than the pickup. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Why don't you use the always on display on the Apple Watch? For one, it consumes more battery life, and I never thought that the raise to wake was very bad. For me, the display is always on when I want it to be, and I don't want to waste power when I'm not using it. For one, you can preserve battery health by not using as many cycles by leaving it off, so it'll last longer. And honestly, there's still times where the display goes on and I didn't mean for it to. So I've never been. Some people disagree, but for me, I've not been in that many situations where I'm like, come on, watch, turn on. I need the display to turn on, and I don't like that there's like a on but not quite on. You're like, you have to tap it to wake it up, and then things become more interactive. Yeah, you can do battery replacement for iPads. Yeah, why not? Would you get the iPhone foldable if it comes out? To review, for sure. To keep, probably not. I don't think I would need an iPhone foldable for my daily life, but from a content creator's perspective, it would be really, really nice. To make videos about, to review it, I think would be a lot of fun. I want Apple to get weirder. I think Apple's been playing it all pretty safe, and I would like to see Apple try to do some more interesting hardware approaches. But anyway, I appreciate the super chats and all the good questions. Thank you all for voting. Sounds like a decent number of people would switch to Android if it had iMessage, which is why maybe if they do launch it, they should do it overseas and not in the US to preserve sales. But I appreciate you all for tuning in, and I hope you all have an excellent rest of your day. Take care, all. Bye-bye.